Hello, everyone, and welcome to this microlearning titled, What Does a Sexual Assault Case Look Like in Our Community? Preparations. This is the second microlearning in our Case File Review series. These microlearnings will give sexual assault response teams more information about the Case File Review Workbook. So today, we will discuss the purpose of the Preparations chapter of the Case File Review Workbook. We will begin by providing you with a brief overview of all the activities involved in the Case File Review Workbook. We will also go into detail about some of the activities. Lastly, we will discuss the next steps of the actual review once teams feel fully prepared. As a reminder, this microlearning series is part of SVJI's Rural Project and has been made possible with the support of the Office of Violence Against Women. We would like to thank OVW for their support. My name is Fatima Hayoma, and I am one of the Rural Project Coordinators at SVJI at Mincasa. I've been with Mincasa for 3 years now, and previously I was a multilingual advocate and prevention education coordinator.
My name is Miranda Gonzalez, and I am the other Rural Projects Coordinator at SVJI at Mincasa. I have been with Mincasa for going on 2 years now. Previously, I was a community-based advocate at a dual service organization. Before we begin this microlearning, we would like to take a moment to remind folks of the definition of case file review. Case file review is a systematic process of examining case files and identifying themes within the criminal legal response. It can be used to determine compliance with or deviance from established policies and protocols. Case file review also can include a determination of gaps and barriers to effective community response to sexual assault. Throughout this microlearning, we will be using the term case file. This refers to all legal documents and other records accumulated in a criminal legal response to a sexual assault. This can include reports created by law enforcement, forensic medical examinations, and prosecutorial notes as related to interactions with the victim survivor. We at SVJI recommend using closed cases when using this form of evaluation.
Our Case File Review Workbook follows a 4-step evaluation model: plan, do, reflect, and apply. In today's session, we will be focusing on the second chapter of the plan step, which is called preparation. In this chapter, teams plan their case file review. If you have not watched our first microlearning session on the Foundations chapter, we recommend watching that one first before moving on to this one. The preparations chapter in the workbook allows teams to thoroughly plan their review before starting it in their community. Preparing for the review requires several critical conversations, making this chapter the longest one in the workbook. Part of the preparation process asks teams to have challenging conversations before reviewing cases. For example, in our Confidentiality and Redaction section, we asked teams to discuss how team members can support each other in upholding confidentiality standards, which can be particularly difficult for advocates who cannot share any additional information about a case with the team. Team members must be open with each other for these conversations to be effective. Additionally, several of the activities in this chapter ask teams to think about how preparing for the review will work best for their communities. By spending several months to prepare for the review, teams can stay focused on the needs of their communities. While this chapter may take time, as teams move through the activities of the workbook, they will feel better prepared for the actual review. There are 10 different activities in the preparation chapter. Instead of going into great detail for each one, we will provide an overview of their objectives. However, some activities may need more explanation. These activities are in bold on the slide, and we will provide more details and the page numbers where each activity can be found in the workbook once we finish the general overview. These activities are designed to be completed during a 90-minute team meeting, but depending on your team's makeup, they may take more or less time to complete. The first 3 activities in this chapter will set the tone for the remainder of the chapter and determine some early logistics of the review. The first activity is titled Leadership Roles in Case File Review. In this activity, teams will determine who will take on various roles throughout the case file review process, such as facilitator, note-taker, and point of contact between the team and disciplines providing cases. We encourage teams to share these roles among the team members to prevent one individual from becoming overwhelmed with the process. Next, teams will develop their discussion agreements for the case file review process. These guidelines are on conversations that will occur throughout the case file review process. For example, some teams may ask members to focus on the system's response when providing feedback, not individuals in the agencies. Finally, teams will determine which cases will be part of the review. Instead of listing specific cases, the team will create a guide with a list of parameters for the discipline providing the case notes. We will provide more information about this activity later on in the microlearning. The next 3 activities provide a deeper dive into how teams communicate with one another during the review process. In the Confidentiality and Redaction chapter, teams will revisit their confidentiality standards for all team members and discuss how to uphold them throughout the review process. This activity was written in collaboration with the Victim Rights Law Center, and as a part of that collaboration, we also developed a 90-minute webinar that discusses confidentiality and case file review in detail. The webinar can be viewed on our MinCasa YouTube page. We will not be going into detail on confidentiality and case file review during this microlearning, but we recommend reaching out to us directly at svji@mincasa.org or reviewing the previously mentioned webinar if you have any questions. Next, teams will take time to develop a shared language as it relates to case file review. This will help teams members provide clarity on specific terms as they come up during the evaluation process. We will share more details about this activity later on in the microlearning. Finally, teams will take a moment to reorient themselves to their values and missions as a team regarding case file review. By having this conversation ahead of time, teams will maintain their focus on systems change work in their community. The final 4 activities focus on the team's actual evaluation process. Team members will practice providing and receiving feedback by discussing the definition of feedback, brainstorming methods of providing feedback, and reviewing steps to take while receiving constructive feedback. We will go into more detail about this activity later on, but it's important to keep in mind that evaluating a community's response requires a review of the services provided by team members' disciplines. By discussing how to provide feedback ahead of the time, team members can maintain their focus on reviewing the system rather than evaluating individuals who may work within that system. Teams will also adapt 2 analysis tools to fit the needs of their specific case file review. The first analysis tool uses a checklist as a model, which follows the basic criminal legal response, but can be modified to reflect the team's protocols. The second analysis tool is an open-ended observation form that individual team members can use to take notes while reviewing cases. Depending on the team's anchor question or the focus of the review, individuals may use one or both forms to document their preliminary thoughts while reading through case notes. The last activity focuses on tending to the team's wellness in the case file review process. The activity encourages team members to discuss what they will need to feel supported through the actual review. Now that we have shared a brief overview of all the activities in this chapter, we will spend some time describing the activities in bold in more detail.
Determining which case files to review is an important part of the review process. To uphold some disciplines' confidentiality requirements, SVJI recommends developing a set of parameters for the agency providing the case files, as opposed to a specific list of cases. Teams can use the graphic found on page 46 of the workbook to guide this discussion. Some questions to consider when developing these parameters include: what does the team want to learn? This can be a great time for teams to revisit their anchor question. What is the structure of the review? For example, some teams may want to review cases where victim survivors were an acquaintance with the suspect. What systems are participating in the case? Here, teams could determine how many system partners must be listed in the case notes. For example, teams may determine that the case notes document contact with at least 2 different disciplines, like law enforcement and prosecution. Are we using active or closed cases? Here at SVJI, we recommend using closed cases for this form of evaluation. Finally, how many cases do we want to review? We recommend reviewing anywhere from 6 to 12 cases. It is important to keep in mind that on average, it will take the team about an hour to review each case. Once the team has developed their specific parameters, it is important to communicate this information to the agency providing case files as soon as possible. This will give that agency time to look for cases that fall within these parameters and ask any clarifying questions. While this is happening, we encourage teams to continue to have conversations that will prepare themselves for the review. One activity teams may do while the agency providing cases is reviewing the parameters is getting on the same page, developing shared language. Depending on a member's discipline, some commonly used terms may mean slightly different things. For example, when referring to sexual assault, prosecutors and law enforcement will use the specific legal definition. On the other hand, advocates may have a broader definition that encompasses other forms of sexual violence. Some terms that we recommend discussing include culturally responsive, consent, and accountability. Questions that the team members can discuss with each of these terms include: what does this term mean to you? Where is there variation in this definition among team members? How is the SART mission and values embodied in the definition of these terms? By creating these shared definitions ahead of time, this may reduce confusion team members may have when participating in conversations about community cases. It is also a great opportunity for team members to remind one another of the varying philosophies each person will bring to the team. A major part of any evaluation is providing feedback. However, it can be a challenging practice for teams to navigate. Providing honest and helpful feedback requires team members to be honest and vulnerable with one another. There are several types of feedback team members may provide throughout the case file review process. Positive feedback focuses on the strengths contributions, and values of the system's response to sexual violence. During the review, teams can look at positive feedback to celebrate the work that they have done in improving the response. Constructive feedback focuses on achieving an improved outcome by sharing respectful advice, comments, and suggestions for the future. This feedback is essential in order to improve the system's response. Lastly, harmful feedback is an expression of dissatisfaction that includes insults, abusive language, harmful stereotypes, and other forms of oppression. This feedback is harmful to individual team members and distracts from the evaluation of the response. It is also important to keep in mind that the power we hold as an individual plays a role in whether our feedback is perceived as constructive or harmful. On the flip side, team members must be open to receiving feedback, especially as it relates to their discipline for systems improvement. We ask that teams review 2 scenarios and reflect on how they may respond in similar situations, including questions like, what do you think prompted the person giving feedback? How does this feedback relate to the team's values? By practicing these skills, teams will be better prepared for providing feedback on their system response. Remember, case file review is about evaluation. It is not a performance review. The last activity in the preparation chapter, and one of the most important, is tending to a team's wellness in the case file review process. Reviewing case files can be very draining. Members are asked to read through large documents that contain graphic details of sexual violence and think critically about how the systems were involved. It is important that members are supported so that they can focus on the tasks and provide meaningful feedback. Before reviewing of cases takes place, teams should discuss what they need to feel supported. For example, some teams may decide to provide surfaces at multiple heights when reviewing cases, so that team members can sit or stand while reviewing documents. Teams should think about how they are caring for their body, minds, and hearts, both during and after the actual case file review. For example, many teams will schedule a case review on a Friday so that most team members can take a break before returning to work. Members should also check in with their discipline leadership and ask for the support they need to be fully present in this process.
Once teams have completed the preparation chapter, they will have one final opportunity to practice the decisions they've made through a mock case. We will discuss this further in the next microlearning. Now is also the time to finalize the logistics of the actual review. This can include the date, location, and time that will be devoted to the actual review. We also encourage team members to keep their leadership updated throughout the preparation process and share the decisions made by the team to continue building leadership buy-in, as discussed in the foundation section of this microlearning series. For more information on this, please refer to the first microlearning in this series. Finally, it's now time for the team to complete their actual case file review. Today, you learned about the purpose of the preparation chapter in the Case File Review Workbook. You were given a brief overview of each activity in the case file review and a detailed overview of activities, such as determining which cases to review, getting on the same page with shared language, practicing providing and receiving feedback, and tending to the team's wellness. Finally, we discuss the next steps once teams feel fully prepared for the actual review. Thank you for following along with us in this microlearning. If you have any questions about case file review or other topics related to sexual assault response teams, please reach out to us at svji@mincasa.org.